Every Friday after school, detention was held in room 13, a small, dimly lit classroom at the far end of Lincoln High. It was overseen by Mr. Keating, a strict and humorless teacher who took pleasure in keeping students late. His piercing eyes and monotone voice made him the perfect warden for a place no one wanted to be. But there was something off about room 13. The room had a reputation. Students whispered that strange things happened during detention, especially on stormy afternoons when the wind howled and the school seemed unnervingly quiet. Jake, Emma, Lily, Marcus, and Sam found out firsthand when they were all assigned detention one fateful Friday. It started, as usual, with Mr. Keating glaring at the group as they shuffled into the room. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, but its hands didn't seem to move. Emma glanced at her phone, frustrated. "My clock says it's been 20 minutes, but that clock hasn't moved at all," she whispered to Jake, who shrugged, trying to play it cool. The oddities grew stranger. At first, it was faint noises, scratching sounds in the walls and the occasional whisper that seemed to come from nowhere. Marcus swore he saw movement out of the corner of his eye, but when he turned, there was nothing there. Lily noticed the air getting colder, her breath forming faint puffs of vapor despite the warm spring evening. As the minutes dragged into what felt like hours, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She turned to the far corner of the room, where a faded class photo hung on the wall. The black-and-white picture showed a group of students from decades ago, but something was off. The faces seemed too familiar. Her stomach dropped. "Guys," she whispered urgently. "Come look at this." The others gathered around the photo, their faces pale as they recognized the people in it. It was them. Jake, Emma, Lily, Marcus, and Sam stood among the group, their names scrawled in old-fashioned cursive beneath their faces. Sam's voice cracked. "What the hell is this?" Before anyone could answer, the classroom door slammed shut. The lights flickered violently, and the temperature plummeted. Mr. Keating, who had been silently grading papers, finally looked up, his face expressionless. Slowly, he stood, his eyes glinting unnaturally in the dim light. "Welcome back," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally. "You've been here before, and you'll be here again." Panic erupted. Jake and Marcus rushed to the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Lily screamed as the windows began to frost over, obscuring the view outside. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a storm, until they became distinct voices calling their names. Emma grabbed the photo off the wall, desperate for answers. On the back, she found a scrawled message: "5 souls lost, bound to this room. The cycle never ends." Suddenly, the desks began to scrape across the floor, forming a circle around the group. Mr. Keating stepped closer, his face now a twisted, ghastly mask. "You belong to this place now," he intoned, his voice layered with dozens of others. Double quotes, "No, we don't," Jake shouted, grabbing a chair and hurling it at the window. The glass shattered, but beyond the shards was not the schoolyard they expected. Instead, there was only darkness, endless and impenetrable. Emma, clutching the photo, suddenly remembered something she had read about the school. Years ago, a fire had swept through the old building, trapping several students in what was then room 13. The legend claimed the teacher in charge had locked the door, refusing to let anyone leave until detention was over. The students perished, and the room was rebuilt, but the spirits remained, forever reliving their final moments. "We have to break the cycle," Emma realized, her voice trembling. "It's the only way to get out." "How?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of whispers. "Apologize," Emma said, staring directly at Mr. Keating. "Acknowledge what happened and let them go." The group joined hands, their fear momentarily overridden by determination. "We're sorry," Emma said aloud. "We're sorry for what happened to you. You deserve better. Please, let us help you find peace." For a moment, everything went still. The whispers ceased, the frost melted, and the light returned to the room. Mr. Keating's twisted expression softened, and his form began to dissolve into wisps of gray mist. The classroom door creaked open, revealing the familiar hallway. Without a word, the group stumbled out, gasping for air. When they turned back, room 13 was dark and empty. On Monday, the students returned to school, but room 13 had been sealed off. Renovations, the principal claimed. But the group knew the truth. They'd escaped barely. And though they never spoke of it again, they couldn't shake the feeling that, somewhere in the shadows of Lincoln High, the whispers might start again. In the sleepy town of Elmwood, nestled deep in a valley surrounded by dense forests, there was a high school with an odd tradition. Every spring, the seniors would receive their yearbooks and gather to sign their names beneath their portraits. The act was more than just a rite of passage. It was an unspoken ritual, a way of marking that fleeting moment in time before they stepped into the world beyond. The year the strange events began, the graduating class was smaller than usual. Some said it was due to declining birth rates or families moving away. Others whispered that the school had a curse. Mia Jackson, an inquisitive senior with a knack for digging into the town's history, dismissed the superstitions. She had always believed every ghost story and urban legend had a rational explanation. That was, until the yearbook incident. It started with subtle whispers. "Did you see Paige's yearbook photo?" Someone murmured in the hallway. Mia caught snippets of conversations. Paige's name, signed neatly in black ink, had completely faded overnight. The next day, Paige didn't show up for class. Her friends said she'd been feeling sick, but by the end of the week, Paige's desk was empty, and her parents had reportedly moved out of town without a word. The following week, it happened again. Jake Carter, the star quarterback, had his name vanish beneath his photo. By the next morning, his locker was cleared out, and no one seemed to know where he'd gone. He probably skipped town, someone speculated. But Mia couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something more sinister was at play. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Mia stayed late in the school library one Friday night, combing through old yearbooks. What she found chilled her to the bone. Every 5 years, like clockwork, certain students' names disappeared from their photos. And each time, those students vanished without a trace. Even stranger, the years aligned with particularly grim legends about the school, a fire that burned down the original library, a series of mysterious drownings at the local lake, and a bus accident that left no survivors. Mia's heart raced as she flipped through the pages. Was it a coincidence, or was there something more malevolent at work? She noticed that the affected students often shared one thing in common: their names were always among the first signed in their respective yearbooks. The following Monday, Mia's curiosity turned to dread. Her own name, written neatly in blue pen beneath her portrait, had started to fade. It was faint, as though someone had tried to erase it but given up halfway. Her friends tried to reassure her, but Mia couldn't ignore the pit forming in her stomach. That night, she sat at her desk, the yearbook in front of her, staring at her fading name. A strange sensation overcame her, a pull toward the mirror hanging on the wall across from her bed. She glanced up and froze. Her reflection wasn't copying her movements. While Mia sat frozen in fear, the reflection smiled. Slowly, deliberately, it raised a finger to its lips, as if to shush her. Panicking, Mia grabbed her phone and called her best friend, Sarah. "I'm coming over," Sarah said, hearing the panic in Mia's voice. "Don't do anything stupid, just wait for me." But as Mia waited, the room grew colder, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness. Shadows seemed to lengthen and stretch toward her. When Sarah arrived, she found Mia's room empty. The desk lamp was still on, and the yearbook lay open to Mia's photo. Her name was completely gone. On the mirror, written in fog condensation, were the words, "I'm with them now." The next morning, rumors swept through the school about Mia's disappearance. Some said she'd run away, others insisted she'd been taken. Sarah, heartbroken and terrified, took it upon herself to investigate further. She discovered a chilling passage in an old town journal describing a ritual tied to the land where the school was built. The ritual demanded offerings every 5 years, offerings of the brightest, the most promising. The next batch of yearbooks arrived early that spring. Sarah refused to sign hers and urged others to do the same. But the school's administration insisted the tradition continue. As Sarah's name started to fade from her photo, she realized too late that the curse didn't require her consent. It only required her presence. Years later, a new set of seniors would look through their yearbooks, oblivious to the whispers in the halls and the empty seats that no one seemed to remember. The curse continued, its dark appetite never satisfied, as the vanishing yearbook claimed its next victims.